all the nations of the world are nothing in comparison to him. They are but a drop in the bucket, dust on the scales. The first time I've read this verse, it's just, it's so powerful, so passionate that comes from the heart of God. He's saying that to all of us as we read those verses from 9 to 31. He's practically challenging each one of us to just try and find out any other superhero other than me. As we continue this series, Jesus My Superhero, we come to our fourth point on why are we calling Jesus our superhero. 3 weeks back, we started as we started this series. On the first day, we learned that we call Jesus as our superhero because my God is always for me. The second week, we looked at the second characteristic of Jesus as our superhero and realized that he is always with me. Last week, we looked at the third characteristic of Jesus Christ as our superhero, that he will remain faithful to me. This week, we will look at the fourth one. My God is my superhero because he uses his power for me. His power for me. Just wanted to give you a glimpse of what his power is and made you read those verses from 9 to 31. It just is the gist of who he is, the kind of power he possesses. There is a doctor by the name of one of the superheroes by the name of Jonathan Osterman. You may not know who is Jonathan Osterman, or you may not even heard his, some of us have maybe not heard his superhero name also. He's known as Dr. Manhattan. He's supposed to be the most powerful of all superheroes. There is nothing Dr. Manhattan can do. It so happens that this Jonathan Osterman was a physicist who is transformed into a blue-skinned, powerful being after he walks into a reactor. His girlfriend's watch, he forgets in the reactor as he tries to mend with the reactor. So he goes back into the reactor, tries to extract the watch. And before he even could walk out, the reactor closes on itself and starts. And before he knew it, he's blown into different pieces of atom and molecules and all that stuff. Disintegrates into that. And it so happens, miraculously, he's formed again into this blue-skinned creature called Dr. Manhattan. He's supposed to be the most powerful superhero in all the superheroes. Because there is nothing that this guy can do. Because he can duplicate himself into multiple Dr. Manhattans. He can just take the whole world and disintegrate into molecules and atoms, and he's that powerful. There is nothing he can do. He can see the past, present, and the future in one single shot. All the worlds, if there are worlds, different worlds, he can see them in one single, in a single movement. That means he can be on the Earth, he can be on the Mars, he can be on another planet at the same time. That's Dr. Manhattan. Practically, they have recreated a superhero with God's character. What's really interesting about Dr. Manhattan, as I was reading through his story and trying to find out his characteristics, I've realized that they kind of copied everything about God, except for one thing they just left out. Dr. Manhattan, though all-powerful he is in the fictional story, doesn't have emotions in him. He cannot identify with human beings. He doesn't care what happens. There is no moral for him. There's no good or bad for him. There's no right and wrong for him. There is no good and evil for him. He's just a moral creature. But our God is not a moral creature, amoral. Our God is a moral God. That means he knows the difference between good and bad, right and wrong. So therefore, our God has emotions in him. And that makes him a special person for all of us. That's why, as he talks in Isaiah, he expresses his anger that you, human beings, had dared enough to carve an image by wood or stone or gold or silver and try and identify that idol with me. How can you do that? He's angry, as he's talking. Can you even think of the kind of power I possess, is what he's asking in Isaiah 40 as we read them. Our God is all powerful. what's good about this God? The reason I call Jesus as my superhero is because while he's powerful, he also wants to use his power on behalf of his people. That makes him a superhero. He identifies with us, he loves us. Because he loves us, he wants to use his power. He's willing to use his power for us. One of the greatest things about incarnation, as we come closer to the celebration of Christmas, you and I need to realize this, that our God is powerful, but not only our God is powerful, he's willing to use his power on behalf of us. That is the implication that we see as we look at incarnation. Just as you look at incarnation, Jesus coming to this world shows us that our God is not only powerful to come out of a virgin's womb, but he's willing to do that, come out of a virgin's womb, like you and me. He's not only powerful, he's able, but he's willing to use it for us on behalf of all of us. Let's just try and understand his omnipotence. In theology, this word called omnipotence, this all-powerful nature of God, is called omnipotence. It simply means God is able, capable to do anything. Anything. Absolutely anything. As long as it does not violate his character. Anything, all things, no matter how big, how small, no matter how impossible it looks, God can do it as long as it doesn't violate his own character. That means if it is not asking him to lie, if God cannot lie, by the way, there are some things that he cannot do. God cannot lie. God cannot change. You remember? Next week I'll talk about that. How our God is unchangeable. He cannot do that. He cannot change. He cannot deny himself. He exists. So therefore he cannot deny himself. He cannot be tempted. You cannot tempt God. That's why the Bible says don't try to tempt God. You can't tempt God. There are some things that he cannot do because they violate his character. But there is nothing that God cannot do. God is capable of doing anything. There's no task that is too large, too difficult for him. And he never fails or never gets tired. You need to understand that. He never fails and never gets tired. That's why the theologians called it omnipotence. You just can't comprehend the power of God in just one single statement. It's unlimited power of God. Awesome. Too awesome to describe. He is so powerful that he can do whatever pleases him. Whatever pleases him, whatever fulfills his purpose, he will do that. He is never restrained, inhibited by anything. He's not constrained by anything. He has this ability that he can use to create things out of nothing. That's powerful he is. Actually, let me try and explain the power of God. Because I've always thought the omnipotence as some mystical power. But how does Bible describe omnipotence? Let me explain that and then I'll move on to a few very important truths that we must learn about his omnipotence. Bible, in every time the word omnipotent is used, the Greek word that is used there is called pantocrator. Pantocrator means all ruling. It's not all powerful. It's actually all ruling. Omnipotent actually means God rules over everything. That's what it actually means. There is nothing that is not under his rule, which is usually translated as Almighty God. We call our God Almighty God. It simply means God rules over everything that is ever existed in the universe. All creation comes under his rule. That's what Bible declares. As a matter of fact, it just declares God is all ruling. There is nothing that is not under his rule. So everything that ever existed will listen to whatever he says. That means the stones, the trees, the creation, the planets, the stars, the galaxies, everything that comes under his rule will listen to whatever he says. So therefore, if he says to the ocean to part itself, it will part itself. Because he's all ruling God. So his power comes from his authority as the God who created it. You get the idea? Everything that is created will listen to him. In fact, he's so powerful, even nothing listens to him. I know it's illogical to sound. It's kind of paradoxical when I make that statement. Even nothing also listens to him. Why did I say that? I said that because God created everything out of nothing. Ex nihilo, it's called. He said, and it came into being. The psalmist says. So God is so powerful, even nothing listens to him. At the cost of sounding very irrational, I'm making that statement. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display their knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. Psalmist says in Psalm 19. Everything that is around us declares the power of God. Let me just try and give you an idea on the power of God. Last night we were going to an orphanage. Our team was going on the mission trip to go to an orphanage and spend time with the kids there in the orphanage. There are 35 kids. By the way, we're trying to get them on the 20th. I'll talk about it a little later in the service for our Christmas program. They're going to be our chief guests, by the way. While we were on the way, me and Joseph, we were sitting in the front row, front seat. I was driving. My son was sitting with Joseph. And so he started a conversation about the astronomy. I asked Joseph questions. So he was asking, do you know how big the sun is, how small the earth is, how many times earth, and all those mathematical and physics questions to Joseph. Joseph probably would have felt I've gone back to 4th class again as my son is asking all these questions. So while this conversation is happening, something else is running in my head. I started thinking about how it's a great conversation to illustrate the power of God today to you. Just to give you the idea, as we live in the solar system, we know that the dominant light in our solar system comes from sun. Sun is the source of the light to the earth and the entire solar system. And with a diameter of 860,000 miles, sun's diameter is 860,000 miles. That simply means 1.3 Earths can fit into 1.3 million Earths can fit into the sun. 1.3 million. That's 11,30,000 basically. Or 10,30,000, whichever. Earths in the sun. That big the sun is. And yet they say sun is just an average sized star in our galaxy called Milky Way. There are 100 billion stars in Milky Way, and each one adding more each day, every day. 100 billion stars in one galaxy. Now just go out of our galaxy and try and picture how big our galaxy is. It seems from one end to the other end, if you want to travel from one end to the other end of our galaxy, it would take 100,000 light years, not years, light years. That means the speed of light. That simply means it will take 9.4 trillion kilometers. That's the distance between one end of the galaxy to the other end of galaxy. 9.4 trillion. That is 9.4, 12 zeros beside it. That big our Milky Way is. And as you go out, you would see that our universe has billions of Milky Ways. Billions of galaxies. And Bible says he holds all things in the palm of his hand. He holds all things in the palm of his hand. This almighty, powerful God comes to the world and shows his power to you. That I'm here on the earth. I want to show my love for you. Amazing. This huge galaxy with so many stars and universe with so many millions of galaxies, trillions and billions of galaxies. And he holds everything in his hand. That's why Isaiah says, look up into the heavens. Who created all the stars? That he calls them one after the other, like an army. They come and he names after them. He calls them by name. Try and remember everybody's name in the church. You will know what I feel every Sunday. None of them are lost, not even once, or strayed away, Bible says. That powerful. Our God is truly omnipotent. Somebody said, if we compare just the Milky Way to American continent, North America, that size, the North American continent, that means it includes Canada and US and Mexico and Belize and all that stuff. If the North American continent, if that is Milky Way, the entire solar system would be a cup of tea. Just fit into a cup. Imagine what kind of God we have with us this morning. Our God is truly omnipotent. 3 truths come out of his omnipotence. I just want to give them to you and then give an application for you today. 3 truths as we look at his omnipotence. Number 1, these are simple truths, but these need to get into your head. Number 1, our God is the ultimate source of all power. Don't you ever forget that he is the source of all power. The tendency for all of us is this, that while we live on the earth, when we go to our jobs, when we are at home, or when we face a financial crunch, when we face a trouble, a disease, sickness, the sickness looks big. The financial crunch looks big. The loss looks big. Your boss looks big. You feel as if this power that comes from them is crunching you. And I want you to understand this truth, that our God is the source of all power, not the sickness that is bogging you, not the financial crunch that you're facing right now, or not even the mountain in your boss. Your God is the source of all power. We forget that, therefore we're always in this mode of depression. Because we see the power of what is around us, and we feel as if we are diminished by that power. We forget that our God is actually sublime in his power. He's more powerful than anything that you ever see. In your hands are strength and power to exalt and to give strength to all. Psalmist says. Our God is the ultimate source of power. That means he's more powerful than anything in the universe. That's what you need to understand. If he is the source of all power, that simply means he's more powerful than anything on the earth. The combined energy of earth's storms, winds, oceans, waves and tsunamis, all things, all other natural forces together are not even equal to a fraction of his omnipotence. Whatever God chooses will come to pass because he has the ability to make anything bend to his word. Everything I plan will come to pass, for I will do whatever I wish, God says through Isaiah. He talks to Job, and Job acknowledges this fact. I know that you can do all things, God. No plan of yours can ever be thwarted, he says. God is more powerful than anything in the universe. God is not only more powerful than anything in this universe, he also has power to create anything out of nothing. At the end of the service, or probably in the middle of the service, Andrew and I is going to come and talk about our progress. But let me just give you a heads up. That our God, even though everything looks nothing, can create something out of nothing. That is the hope that we all have in us, inside us, that keeps us going. The Lord merely spoke and heavens were created. If God merely speaks, land would be created for us. Or God merely spoke and the heavens were created. He breathed the word and the stars were born. Let everyone stand in awe of him. For when he spoke, the world began. You know, the words seem very simple there. You've got to understand the punch in that. When he spoke, the world began. It appeared at his command. He says, the world, come out. It came. Pastor Tony Evans was once talking about the omnipotence of God. And he says this: for God, it takes no more effort for God to create a universe than it takes for him to create an ant. Oh, you got to understand the verse. You got to understand the statement. For God, it takes no more effort to create a universe than it takes for him to create an ant. A-N-T. Just like how he creates an ant, he can create a universe. That's what he's trying to say. It's that powerful. He can do anything. He can create anything out of nothing. His power is unlimited. Because he's the ultimate source of all power, his power can also sustain everything that he created. God is powerful to sustain anything that he created. So that means if he has created you as you are, he knows how to take care of you. That's the point I'm trying to make this morning. If he is the one who got you together, two people together in marriage, he knows how to take care of that marriage. If he is the one who gave you children, he knows how to take care of your children. Because he is the one who gave you the children. There are people who are praying for children, they didn't get children, but you got a child. That means it is a gift from him. And he knows how to take care of your children. If he has given you a job, he knows how to give you power to perform your job well. He knows how to sustain what he created. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 3. He is the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by the power of his word. The Bible says, the Son sustains the universe by the mighty power of his command, his word. So there is no mountain, no ocean which cannot be sustained by God. Let me just illustrate this morning for you how powerful our God is, because I want you to understand that he is the ultimate source of your power. In Daniel chapter 4, you would see a king by the name of King Nebuchadnezzar. King Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful ruler on the earth at that time. He has seen how good God is. He has seen how powerful the God of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is. Just a chapter before, he has seen how powerful his God is. And yet, this guy dares to talk to himself. And look at what he says to himself. Daniel chapter 4. It's worth looking at those verses, so please open your Bibles. Daniel chapter 4, verses 28. But all these things did happen to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, he was taking a walk on the flat roof of royal palace in Babylon. He looked out across the city and he said to himself, this is what he's saying to himself, look at this great city of Babylon. By my own mighty power, I have built this beautiful city as my royal residence to display my majestic splendor. While these words were still in his mouth, a voice called down from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, this message is for you. You are no longer the ruler of this kingdom. You will be driven from human society. You will live in the fields with wild animals and you will eat grass like a cow. 7 periods of time will pass while you still live this way, until you learn that the Most High rules over all the kingdoms of the world and gives them to anyone he chooses. So really, your financial crunch is nothing. Really, the sickness is nothing. Really, the problem that is pressing you is nothing. King Nebuchadnezzar was nothing. He was made to live like a cow eating grass. Literally happened. The next verse says, immediately it happened. Immediately he was driven out of the society and started eating grass like a cow. So don't look at somebody or don't look at something and be scared of this power or their power, because your God is more powerful than what is in front of you right now. In 1912, on October 10th, when this British white liner called Titanic has left New Southampton to go to New York on its first ever voyage, maiden voyage. It was supposed to take 7 days to reach. It was supposed to be the fastest, the most luxurious ship that man has ever built. It was called the Unsinkable. When it left New Southampton's pier, the newspapers carried an article talking about how great man has become in creating this most luxurious vehicle man has ever seen, and titled it The Unsinkable. 4 days later, on the October 14th, late in the night, it hit an iceberg. No tsunami, not heavy storm, just an iceberg. And the Unsinkable sunk. It's not a storm. You got to understand that point. That's the point I'm trying to make to you. It's an iceberg that sunk the Unsinkable. And then there is this small boat that was caught in a storm. It was a storm that is not an ordinary storm. There are these 12 guys who are sitting in this boat who have seen storms before. They were fishermen, you see. They know how storms look like. They have been in the sea, at the sea, all their life. They know how to fish in the storm, in the middle of a rain. Now these fishermen who are used to an ocean, regular life, their life is on the ocean, are scared to death. They could see death staring at them while the storm is hitting them. While this boat is being rocked from one side to the other side, they knew they're going to be dead. The guys who already experienced storms before, those are the guys who are scared to death because they know that this is not an ordinary storm. It will sink them. This boat is nothing in front of the British white liner called Titanic. It's just an ordinary boat caught in the storm. And then this man gets up from his sleep, raises his hand, and says, "Be calm." Everything goes shoo. That's the power of God. So you got to understand, the storm doesn't have the power. This ordinary man who's sleeping in your boat has the power. That's why Jesus is my superhero. The second truth you and I need to learn about his power, his omnipotence, is this: that he uses his power purposefully. Just because he's got power, he doesn't show it off. You got to understand that point. He uses his power purposefully. Every time he uses his power, there is a reason behind why he's doing what he's doing. You see, our God is a God of design, cosmic design. He knows, as he designed the universe, he knew how to keep everything in order. Everything is placed exactly where it is supposed to be. Everything runs exactly how it is supposed to run. Because he's a designer by nature. He's a creator, you see. So everything that he does has a purpose behind it. So therefore, whenever he uses his power, there is a reason behind using that power. Whenever he doesn't use his power, there is a reason for him not to use his power. That truth you and I need to understand. Just because he's omnipotent, you can't keep shouting at him every day and say, "I'm fasting and praying, why don't you use power? Your power on behalf of me." He says, "No, I've got to have a reason for it." Even for not using his power in your life, there is a purpose behind it. God uses his power purposefully. He knows he's got this clear mind. He knows exactly what he's doing. And he knows exactly when to send his power for you, use his power for you. Please don't live in this world thinking we live by luck. No, we don't. Everything that happens because God wants it that way to happen. Bible says he has a plan for this world. The world has a plan, not just you. Even the world has a plan. I have a plan for the whole earth. For my mighty power reaches out throughout the world. He says in Isaiah, I have a plan for the world. If I have a plan for the world, don't you think I have a plan for your life? Don't you think that I know exactly what's happening right now in your life? And don't you know that I can use your power, and if I'm not using, that simply means there is a reason for me not using for my power on behalf of you. His power will be used purposefully exactly at the moment that he needs, he thinks, he knows would be the right time. So that means you and I need to understand that he is in control of your life. If he's using his power purposefully, it simply means he's in control of what's happening right now. He's in control of my joblessness. He's in control of the situation in the job. He's in control of my home. He's in control of my finances. Yes, they look bleak, but I do know he's in control. If he's not doing something, he's got a purpose. If he's doing something, he's got a purpose behind it. So you wait. Because he's in control. Yes, the world seems chaotic, out of control. And yet God knows what is future. Therefore, he is in control. He is not the author of evil and suffering. That's what, as you face them in this world. Nor is he responsible for the consequences of your sin. Your sin bears fruit. Please understand that. So he is not responsible for the consequences that you face for the sin that you do. God is in control of your life. While you do break his law, he is still covering you and controlling everything without from it going haywire completely and destroying you. He has an unlimited power within himself and does what he wants with it. That does not mean he's a tyrant. That does not mean he runs the whole world on his whims. He doesn't do that. I told you in the beginning that our God is omnipotent, and yet he is an emotional God. Just because he's got power, he doesn't run a puppet show on the earth. Please don't misunderstand the omnipotence of God. While he is a God who can control everything, who is in the control of everything, while he is a God who has a design behind everything, he still chooses to listen to your heart, listen to your cry. If he was not listening, you wouldn't have been alive this morning. Trust me. You wouldn't have been sitting here safely. How many of you prayed as you left from your home, as you drove your car on the way to church, saying, God, today please take us safely to the church and bring us back home safely? Few of you. Few of you did not pray. But both of you reached here to the church safely. He's in control of your life. So he's got a purpose that you would sit today and listen to what he's trying to tell you this morning. Come and see what our Lord has done, what awesome miracles he does for his people. By his great power, he rules forever. He watches every movement of nations. Although events at this moment make no sense to you this morning, he knows everything from the beginning to the end. So therefore, it does make sense to him for not doing something in your life at this moment. I always tell this story of Amy Carmichael, of how she prayed one day after she went from Sunday school, when she heard her Sunday school teacher teach that God can do anything. she went home praying a prayer that she has been always wanting. You see, she was an Irish woman, Irish girl. Now, Irish people are great. They look awesome because they have blue eyes. Amy Carmichael was born with brown eyes. An Irish girl born with brown eyes would look really apart from. So she really didn't like it. She wanted the blue eyes. So she went home after she heard a Sunday school teacher teach that God can't do anything. She went home and prayed that night sincerely by faith, because the Sunday school teacher had given her a promise that if you by faith say to a mountain to move from here, there, and throw itself into the ocean, it will. So she went, and with a childlike faith, she did pray. She prayed with faith. Please understand that. When a child prays, they are praying with faith. So she is praying in the night, saying, God, when I get up in the morning, I want to have blue eyes. And she slept, believing completely that God is going to give her blue eyes in the morning. Got up in the morning, closed her eyes. She didn't want to see anything. She walked straight to her washroom, stood in front of the mirror where she would brush every day, and slowly opened her eyes. And lo, there, the same brown eyes. She was upset with God. Upset, absolutely. Wouldn't you be? Haven't you prayed like that? Before you went to the bed in the night, saying, God, tomorrow morning I'm going to see a miracle, and get up in the morning, you will be in the same rut. And you're like, God. Amy Carmichael was upset. It was not until she was 40 years old as a missionary in India, in Donavar, she didn't realize what God was actually doing with her in southern Tamil Nadu. It was because she has brown eyes. She would walk into these temples where the temple prostitution, yoginis, were held, covering herself with chocolate powder. And because she has brown eyes, and she would cover herself with chocolate powder, she would look like an Indian. And walk into the temples where the prostitutes were freely without being suspected, and would rescue temple prostitutes. That was the mission of her life. That's why God did not give her blue eyes. She didn't see the end. So she had a problem on the day she prayed. You didn't see the end. So you have a problem this morning that God is not doing anything. But God does see the end. So therefore he doesn't do anything today. So he uses his power purposefully. He's got a plan behind it. But he will use his power if there is a purpose. Imagine the 5 loaves and 2 fish. I know you've heard the story 10,000 times. Hear it one more time, doesn't matter. 5 loaves and 2 fish. As this boy carries them to Jesus, or Andrew carries them to Jesus and gives him 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus prays, calls the 12 guys, breaks the fish into as many pieces as he can, and the loaves into as many pieces as he can, and says, go now. Now there are 20,000 people sitting there. 20,000 people sitting there. Now, Bible does say 5,000 men, right? And women and children. 20,000 people, let's assume that there are 20,000. I forget it, 5,000 people, just 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so these 12 guys spread across the 5,000 people. And now they are taking a small morsel of a fish and a small morsel of a bread piece. Take this plate, go to the first person, and ask her to take. It's a small morsel, so obviously she's going to take both. So she takes a morsel of fish and the bread. Then it's empty. The plate is empty. So she then gives it back to the disciple. Then he gives to the next person. Lo, there was the fish. There is the fish. And there's the bread. Can you imagine the horror in her face right now? She just saw Vinity taking it, right? And she saw an empty plate. And then she sees her food there. Imagine the next guy who is imagining what will happen now. Do you understand the power of God now? Why would he do that? Because when he prayed, he said, God, so that you might be glorified, today do this miracle. That's what he prayed to the Father. There was a purpose behind it. When the purpose of God gets fulfilled by doing a miracle in your life, then he will do it. Number 3, the third truth that you and I need to understand is that God wants us to be the vessels of his power. That God wants us to be the vessels of his power. That means God is willing to use his power through you. He doesn't want to just display his power. He wants to display his power through you. Everybody who believes in him will become a vessel to be a display, to be the one who displays the power of God, the glory of God. That's an interesting thing. That this omnipotent God, who can do anything out of nothing, is choosing to use you and me as the vessels, the vehicles of his power, of his glory. Amazing. He made these 12 guys who were practical jokers. I mean, practically jokers, not practical jokers. People who would do awesome things, display the power of God through their lives. Amazing transformation in their lives. Think about your life now. What God has done in your life. I want you to know everything that you do in this world, every word that you say as a Christian, as the one who carries the living God inside you, is powerful. So therefore, be careful of what you're saying to the other person. Because if you look at the other person who is struggling with sickness and is saying that your God will heal you, he will be healed. Maybe not immediately, but you will see that your word has power. The more you talk negative, the more you are the one who's stopping the power of God being displayed through your life. Our God is willing to use his power through you. That's why Paul prays for the Christians across the world. He says, so that they may be strengthened with all power according to his glorious might. Let me give you at least 5 areas where God is giving you strength, his power. Number 1, God will give you the strength in your weaknesses. He gives you power to conquer your weakness. My grace is sufficient in your weakness. So, since nothing is too hard for God, and since you are weak in some areas, ask God to become your strength. He will become your strength in your weakness. He gives you power to overcome your weakness. He gives you power, number 2, over evil forces that are around you. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw close to God, and God will draw close to you. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw close to God, and God will draw close to you, Bible says. God gives you power to conquer evil forces. God gives you power to live a holy life. God gives you power to live a holy life. You know, you could say that while I'm battling with these evil spiritual forces, the worldly influences, my own fleshly temptations, I don't know how I'll ever be able to live a holy life. And yet, Bible commands us to be holy just as God is holy. That means it is possible for us to be holy. While we are struggling with sin, God says, since I know you cannot, I'm giving you the Holy Spirit who helps you to live a holy life. He gives you power to live a holy life. Peter explains that. As we know Jesus better, he says, his divine power gives us everything we need for living a godly life. He has called us to receive his own glory and goodness, Peter says. So he gives you power to live a holy life. Number 4, he gives you power to proclaim his gospel. He gives you power to proclaim gospel. There are times I wouldn't know, absolutely have a clue what to say when I stand in front of certain people. I had it 2 weeks back. I'm good, I can talk to you because I'm used to you. But if I'm going to mission to the blind, people who are blind, I've never preached to blind people. I don't know how to preach. How do you want me to describe blue to them? Think about it. I have a story that talks about blues and greens and yellows and reds. I was like, God, I don't have any other illustration to make my point there. If I have to tell this story, how am I going to ever tell these guys how to describe blues? How to describe how beautiful the world is? Born blind, you're born blind. How do you want me to describe to you how beautiful looks like? Did I make my point right now? So I stand there wondering, how would I even talk to them? And then God just takes over. You wouldn't believe that there were probably 35, 40 blind people who were right in the front 4 rows. They are the only people who were listening to my message. Nobody else was listening anyway. They are the only group, that 4 lanes, were listening to me attentively as I'm speaking. And I knew God was ministering to them. I knew it was not me. You wouldn't believe that if you are willing in your heart to share something and you don't know how to share it, but you do want to share and you stand there and open your mouth. Jesus promised that as he sent these disciples on their first mission trip. He said, don't you worry when you stand in front of a king, what to say, what not to say. Don't worry about that. Open your mouth and I'll fill your mouth with words. And you won't believe the kind of power your words will have as you stand willingly to share the gospel to people. You won't believe. You won't believe when somebody calls you 5 years later or 7 years later and then says to you, on that day, so-and-so day, you shared so-and-so message. You won't even remember that. So-and-so message that spoke to my heart. There was a guy who came to Bible college. I don't even know his name. And I was his teacher. So on the first day while we were introducing ourselves and I was talking about what I do and he was talking, they share their name and they talk about where they come from on the first class. And as he was talking to me, he said, 5 years back, I've heard you speaking in a youth camp. And I've accepted Jesus Christ. The same day I've committed myself for full-time ministry. And today I'm in the Bible college because you preached on that day. You won't believe how it feels like. You won't just believe that. You'll feel humble, broken, because you don't even know the guy. You don't even remember his name. You don't even remember what you preached on that day. He practically gave me the list of the points that I gave on that morning when I spoke in the youth camp. God gives you power to proclaim his gospel. Number 5, God gives you power to fulfill his plans for our lives. Whatever plan he has planned for you, the purpose that he has placed on your life, the will of God that he has revealed to you, he will help you finish it. He will give you strength to finish it. By his mighty power, God is at work within us. He's able to accomplish infinitely more than we can ever dare, ask, and hope for, Paul says. So he will give you the power to fulfill his plan for your life. You have seen how God worked through an ordinary man like Elijah. James says that, isn't it? Elijah was just like you. Anybody? But when he prayed, it stopped raining. When he prayed, it rained. When he prayed, the fire came down from heaven. Elijah was an ordinary man. Elisha was an ordinary man. He prays, even an axe head, an iron axe head, comes up on the water and starts flowing. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they can believe that the power of God is at work in their lives. Ordinary people like you will do extraordinary things if you only choose to believe in our God. So let me just close this morning with just 3 practical steps for you. Listen to this. Number 1, exalt Him every moment of your life. Because you are nobody. No matter how great you are in your positions, wherever you are, you're just nobody. But He makes you who you are as you are on the earth, as you live on the earth. So exalt your God every moment of your life. Don't just walk away from here with the facts that you have learned about God. Live in that constant fellowship of your God, this great I am. Constantly remember that the greatness of your God that is at work inside your life. Picture how great your God is. And live in that. Live humbly in that picture, in that image that forms in your head. Exalt your God consistently as you live in His presence. O Lord, the God of our ancestor Israel. King David says, may you be praised forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, the majesty. Everything in heavens and on the earth is yours, O Lord. And this is your kingdom. After he becomes the greatest king of the world, he's praying this prayer. That's the difference between Nebuchadnezzar and David. While he's standing at the tip of the greatest kingdom that has ever been established, and being the greatest king, he was one of the best kings that you would ever see. And he's praying this kingdom is yours. I am a shepherd boy. That's the prayer David utters at the deathbed. You see, practically his deathbed. He's just about to die now. And he prays, who am I, God? I'm just a shepherd boy. You made me the king. You gave the kingdom. This is your kingdom. Can your heart be like that every moment as you live? Exalt your God always. Number 2, reflect His image. Reflect His image. Because you're a king's son, behave like a king's son. Doesn't mean act with arrogance. That's not what it means. Your king is humble. That's what Paul says in Philippians chapter 2. Even though he was in the very nature like God, he became like nothing. Learn from Jesus, he says. Behave like a king's son. You are the king's son because you are reflecting His image in this world. You're carrying His banner in this world. Behave like a Christian. Reflect His image. So live with the consciousness. Number 3, share His majesty. Share His majesty to others. I'm asking you to talk to people who doesn't understand how good it is to have a God like this. Talk to them. Share this wonderful glory that is given to you. Pass it on to others. Share it with others. Because they also need to know that there is a God who loves them and cares for them. This season, may it be your challenge. That you would exalt your God, your superhero always. That you would reflect His character in your own life. And then you would start sharing it with others. May He be glorified in your lives. This great I am. Would you just take a moment to close your eyes? I'm going to ask the worship team to come on stage. They have this wonderful song called The Great I Am. And as they sing that song, take a few moments to worship Him today. You know, there's nothing that you can do today but to just give thanks to your God and worship Him. Choose to worship Him. Take a moment to thank Him that He's told you this morning that He's more powerful than anything that you're facing right now. He is the ultimate source of your power. And that He uses His power for His purpose. And that today He told you that He is willing to use His power through you. That simply means He is going to make you the miracle. rather than doing a miracle. He wants you to be the vessel of His power. So thank this wonderful God